China's real estate has gone berserk. The prices have lifted to levels never imagined except by the central planners who envisioned a world of never-ending bubbles. Housing is unaffordable by any metric in the major cities in China, and the government has relaxed lending standards in the past few years to try and maintain this price escalation. Eventually, this will have to come back around to punish those who took those major risks. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today we are going to cover the mortgage fraud that has taken place in China. Let's begin. Chinese banks typically allow home buyers to use up to half of their monthly incomes to repay mortgages. So if we were to stop there, it would be bad, because that doesn't factor in your utilities, your food bills, your maintenance fees if you incur those, and any other expenses that you have on a monthly basis. And that would mean that there isn't much left over to buy the things that you may want. So that's the situation, but it gets worse. The market in cities like Shenzhen and Shanghai is full of buyers whose out-of-pocket property spending is much more than their actual monthly salaries. So what is that? They spend more than they have. They're going further and further into debt to be able to afford the homes that they are buying. That is a recipe for disaster. If that's not a bubble, then I really don't know what is. There's a lot of criticism that I face here, but when I read things like this, it should be this idea and these policies that are put into place that allow this to happen that should be ridiculed, that should be judged. Bill Duan, a manager at a Chinese investment bank, said it was not unknown for Chinese buyers to exaggerate their salaries or use fake payslips when taking out mortgages and loans, and this may be where the problem starts. This is the mortgage fraud that we experienced in 2007 that plagued the US and other places around the world, and there's no difference that we are experiencing today in China. It's known among industry insiders that local branches of the banks in many cities do not always double check salary details with employers, even though the applicants offered salary certificates for several times the city's average wages. They're unable to pay for what they have purchased. They're going further into debt. They are using fraudulent numbers. And will this be a surprise to anyone when it comes tumbling down? And the answer is unfortunately yes. A lot of people will be surprised by it. A lot of people will be hurt by it. But as long as the asset continues to appreciate, for the time being, they're all fine. They're not worried. They don't care as long as everything stays the way it is. But in an instant, that could change. Total social debt. It has been said that those in China don't have the same problems as those in the West, simply because the people don't use mortgages, they don't use credit cards, and apparently everything is in cash. Well, maybe if you take the entire country as a whole, but if you look at the major cities, the middle class, upper middle class, you're looking at a lot of people that are taking on more and more debt. So the legend in the top right corner here: corporate debt, government debt, and household debt. And lo and behold, increasing year after year. All of them. One that is particularly important here is corporate debt. I've covered this before about the corporate debt, how that is increasing dramatically. Household debt. Now they're only showing back from 2007 and you can see the trend. However, if we go back another 10, 20 years, you'll see that it is very minuscule compared to where these numbers are headed. More and more people are taking on more and more debt. They do use credit cards. They do use digital payment systems. They do incur fees, different taxes, and everything else. They are no different than their Western counterparts. So that's not really true. I mean, look, when you take the whole country, 1.35 billion people, sure, you're going to get a different picture. But look at those in the average city. You get a different picture. China bank loans, okay? Total bank loans outstanding. Look at how this has increased over the years since the financial crisis. You have seen these numbers escalate. Share of household loans outstanding as well. These numbers will continue to increase, but nobody seems to be concerned about that. Now, look at this. This is a startup, Loftium. And the title here says it all. Don't let the down payment get you down. So if you don't have a down payment on your home, but you'd really like a home, wouldn't it be really cool if a company would come in and pay for that down payment? Well, now that exists. So what's the catch, right? Well, they're going to do a deal. They are going to make you sign this little piece of paper, and you have to rent out one of your rooms to Airbnb. So they calculate how much you'd make in Airbnb, and then they would make you a little deal, and they'll pay you. So basically it's the same, but over a longer period of time. If you don't have the money to front, then you could do this. So you can go in here and have people living in the house with you, and you'll be able to pay that off over a period of time. I think if somebody wants to do this, that's just fine and dandy, but perhaps these people are taking on too much. That's what concerns me. You know, there are places, for example, look at Amsterdam, where you can finance the property at greater than the purchase price. So you can finance it at, last I had heard, 106% of the purchase price. So why would anybody rent? Why wouldn't everybody just take on 106%, cover the closing costs, cover some major minor renovations, and you'd be all fine and dandy? I mean, this is a policy that is global. It's going on everywhere. Europe, US, and Asia as well. You're seeing that. And just a couple more here. The Case-Shiller Home Price Index, San Francisco, Seattle, and New York. While they did dip down during the financial crisis, these particular areas have been increasing in the recent years. New York being very spotted. If you look at it, you know, Manhattan, obviously you get a different picture than the suburb regions. Seattle was interesting. After Vancouver implemented the foreign buyers tax, all of a sudden, I showed you here on the channel before, but the search engine in China went ballistic on people looking for homes, real estate in Seattle. So they just switch gears. They don't care where they're buying it. If it's for an investment, they just want to know, where do I put my money? And that's what's happening. Even the pension funds and everything else, they're starting to get into that. China is threatening America's unicorn dominance. That is any company over $1 billion. And you're seeing that while the US is obviously still the king, these numbers have been shrinking over the years. This is just from 2013 to 2017. You'll see these numbers shrinking as time goes on. And then look at China, from 0 up to 36%. They have really increased the amount of companies that exist just in the past few years that are billion-dollar companies. Very, very big. So that's all for this video. If you found it informative, please give me a thumbs up. If you have any criticism, then put it in the comments. Have some facts behind what you say. A lot of the criticisms that I receive is purely opinionated. For example, it's not going to crash because the prices have been rising. That is not an argument. That's just an opinion. How can something that's happened in the past be potentially a good indicator that this will increase? We don't know what's going to happen in the future. I cover all of this information. Yes, we can see trends. We can see that. But does it necessarily mean that that's the case? No. So we are definitely uncertain. That's something I bring up all the time. Nassim Taleb, he's famous for saying, I don't know. They're trying to interview him on Bloomberg, CNBC, everything else. And they ask him a question. He says, I don't know. And the guy is extremely intelligent. But he says, I don't know all the time. Why? Because we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. We can't tell that. We use the past to try to determine the future, but it's not necessarily definitive. That's all. So once again, if you're going to have some criticisms, please, some facts behind it. And just want to tell everybody, thank you very much for all the support that I've been getting. I truly appreciate it very much. Last but not least, if you found this video informative, I know you'll find my books, The Money GPS and my newer release, Global Economic Collapse, even more informative. You can actually flip through these books. If you go over to Amazon, there are links in the description below that will take you there. You can flip through these books for yourself to see if you like them. Take care.